Hi, everybody, and welcome to Love Fraud Live. Romantic relationships with sociopaths always turn out badly. You end up with a broken heart, for starters. You may also end up with your hopes, your sense of self, and perhaps even your worldview shattered. When that happens, how do you recover? I'm Donna Anderson, author of lovefraud.com and host of the True Lovefraud Stories podcast. After betrayal by a sociopath, I help you to understand what happened, put down the emotional burden, and move forward. Tonight, I will explain why, after the sociopath, you feel like you are ruined. I will also explain how to move forward. So at the end of this short presentation, I'll answer your questions. And please subscribe to Love Fraud Live. You'll be notified about all of my upcoming YouTube videos. Okay, let's get started. Not long ago, a woman posted the following comment about sociopaths on one of my YouTube videos. They target those with more empathy. As someone who used to be very empathic, I feel like he ruined me. I don't feel like a normal person. I don't know how to live anymore. My brain doesn't know what to do. Ever. Well, I understand how this Love Fraud viewer feels, and perhaps you do too. Involvement with sociopaths are particularly devastating for empaths. Now, an empath is generally understood to be someone who is extremely attuned to the feelings of others, although this is not an official psychological term. If you're an empath, you're sensitive and empathetic. You're a good listener, and you have strong intuition. This makes you a wonderful friend and partner, but empaths may also face some challenges. Setting boundaries may be difficult for you. Intimacy may feel overwhelming. You may spend so much time helping others with their problems that you experience compassion fatigue. For sociopaths, though, empaths are a big, juicy target. Martha Stout, author of The Sociopath Next Door, writes that the strategy sociopaths use the most to manipulate people is the pity play, which is an appeal to your sympathy. So when charming sociopaths target highly sympathetic empaths, well, the empaths don't stand a chance. Romantic relationships with sociopaths typically lead to betrayal. It's just a matter of how soon the betrayal comes and how bad it is. So, why is this? Well, first of all, sociopaths do not have the ability to authentically love. Real love means caring about the well-being of the other person. Real love includes the ability to be concerned about your needs and to be able to put the person themselves before themselves when necessary. And this is something that sociopaths just can't do. They may proclaim their love, and they may appear to be kind and giving in the beginning, but it's all an act to hook you, reel you in, and convince you to give them what they want. In truth, sociopaths feel perfectly entitled to use you to achieve their objectives. So they convince you to pay their bills, to give them a place to live, to sleep with them, to take care of their kids, to solve their problems, whatever they happen to want at the moment. You do your best to comply. And then you find out that the sociopath has been lying, cheating, stealing, whatever. Your so-called romantic partner has one or more side pieces who are also providing money and services. In fact, the other poor chump has heard all the same promises and lies that you've heard. You're shocked. You probably believe in the golden rule. You want to treat others the way you want to be treated. That's how you live your life. And it's an integral part of your identity. And it's how you expect others to live, especially when they're constantly proclaiming their love for you. But now you've learned that what your partner has really been up to. And this person wasn't just rude or mean. Your entire involvement was built on lies. And the biggest lie was that he or she cared about you. You didn't know that it was possible for a human being to be so callous and cruel. So not only are you betrayed, but your assumptions about how the world works and how people treat each other have been smashed. This is why you feel ruined. The Germans have a concept called Weltanschauung, which means your worldview, your philosophy, your view of life. The sociopath's behavior violates your long-standing, lifelong models of what it means to be human and how people should behave. This really pulls the rug out from under you. Suddenly, nothing makes any sense. Your Weltanschauung has been shattered, and you don't know how to move forward. So, upon discovering the betrayal, you'll probably feel numb for a while. This means your body is protecting you. You've endured a shock so great that you cannot yet handle your thoughts and emotions about the experience. So your mind goes blank and your emotions go flat. My guess is that this is what our commenter meant when she said that her brain didn't know what to do. Slowly, however, the shock wears off. You can help it along by working to ground yourself. So pay attention to your physical surroundings and your sensations. What do you see around you? What can you hear, smell, taste, or touch? In time, you will return to your body and your mind. And then you can take the most important step in your recovery, which is acceptance. Now, acceptance does not mean that the sociopath's behavior is acceptable. Not at all. It does mean that you accept reality. Whatever happened did, in fact, happen. So, here's what you need to accept. The sociopath intentionally did what he or she did, and you were damaged. The sociopath does not care that you were damaged. In fact, the sociopath probably thinks it's your fault that you were damaged. After all, you're the one who believed the lies. Acceptance means coming to terms with what the sociopath did to you. It also means wrapping your head around the fact that the entire way you looked at life, your Weltanschauung, was flawed. If you believed in the golden rule, you've learned the hard way that there are people for whom the rule does not apply. Acceptance can seem daunting, but it is possible and it is crucial. In order to move forward, you must first clearly see where you are. You may need to address critical, practical issues like finding a new job or a new place to live. But real recovery, overcoming the feeling of being ruined, is emotional recovery. Betrayal, anger, grief, disappointment, pain, devastation, shame, feelings like these cause turmoil within us. So instead of burying the difficult emotions, it's best to let them rise to the surface in a safe way so that you can release them. That's where the healing is. It will be a bumpy ride for a while, but healing is possible. And when you choose recovery, eventually you'll realize that you haven't been ruined. True, you've been dinged, and you are not the same person that you were before the sociopath. But with acceptance of your experience and letting go of the troubling emotions, you can grow. You can integrate the experience, developing an awareness of both the light and the dark sides of life. And then you can meet the future with maturity and wisdom. So, that's the presentation for tonight. If you're dealing with a psychopath, antisocial, or narcissist, you can always reach out to me. I can help you understand what happened, put down the emotional burden, and move forward. So for more information, please visit lovefraud.com/talk to Donna. And now I'll answer your questions. So please go ahead and type your comments and questions into the chat. And of course, feel free to ask me anything related to this presentation or whatever else might be on your mind. Oh, looks like we have some comments. Okay, so Dorian says, it's been years. I lost my job in my retirement. Can you explain this? It bothers me the most. It was violent, and then I had him removed from my home. I couldn't stand to hear my own voice. When I called my dog, my voice sounded like him, or perhaps he imitated my voice and made me hate the sound of my own voice. It's confusing. I'm fine with my voice now, but it took years not to hear him when I spoke. Okay. Well, Dorian, I am so sorry for everything that you've been through, and I'm sorry for everything that all of us have been through. Absolutely. And your experience was horrific, especially that losing your job and your retirement. I know how that happens because my ex wiped me out financially too. And those are all very, very difficult issues. And I don't want to, minimize at all what you have experienced. However, sometimes we hang on to the pain of what has happened. And when we hang on to the pain, and there was pain, absolutely there was pain. When we hang on to the pain and continue to hang on to it, it prevents us from finding a way forward. And, I totally get it. You have every reason to feel whatever you felt, the anger, the disappointment, the rage, the embarrassment, whatever it was that you experienced. But the time comes when we need to realize that if we're holding on to all that, the only person it's hurting is us. Because the sociopath is, hopefully he's gone. But it's not bothering him. The things that he did is not bothering him. So what's happening is that when we're holding on to all the stuff that we endured and that we went through, and if it keeps with us for a long time, it makes it almost impossible to move forward. Because we're ruminating, maybe we're going around and around with this. Maybe, our outlook has gotten so that, we feel like there's nothing we can do about it. And the truth is that when we can release what has happened, recovery is possible. It absolutely is possible. Now, maybe you don't get all your money back, and, maybe you don't get that job back that you had, but there are other ways. Things can come around. When you release it, and this is interesting. We talked about this a little bit last week when I interviewed Dr. Liane Leedom, and we talked about the importance of acceptance. And she pointed out that one of the important aspects of accepting what has happened is that then you can stop believing everything, all the lies that the sociopath told you. You know, because one of the main things that they do, which you mentioned in your next comment, which we'll get to you, is that they get into your mind and they start manipulating and distorting how you think about yourself and how you think about, your life and your prospects and everything else. So one of the things that you can do once you accept, first of all, that the person is disordered, there's something fundamentally wrong with this person, and none of it was your fault. Although the sociopath, I'm sure, told you it was your fault and blamed you for everything that happened. That's not true. And that's just part of the gaslighting and the brainwashing that the sociopath engages in. So Dr. Leedom made the point that once you accept that they are what they are and they did what they did, that means you can stop believing everything that they said about you, because it was all lies. It was all part of the manipulation, all part of the brainwashing, all part of drawing you into this cult of him, whatever it was. So you can start to let go of all that. And I think that's kind of what you mentioned. Well, it was violent. I'm sure that was terrible. But you mentioned that you couldn't stand to hear your own voice. And, I'm just going off of what your comment is here. But that's one of the things that's part of the mind control that psychopaths, antisocials, mostly, somewhat with narcissists as well, but that's what they do, is that they infect the way you look at the world, your Weltanschauung, the things that I was talking about previously. And so that becomes, that's why you feel like you're listening to him, because he has invaded your brain and the way you look at things. So, all of that stuff can be let go. Yes, there is trauma involved, and yes, it is often bumpy to deal with it, but it absolutely can be resolved. And, okay. So you also have a comment here about the way he took on my personality is so mind-bending. Yeah, that's something that's part of the seduction strategy, is that they are chameleons and they can do whatever they feel they need to do in the moment in order to snag somebody. And a lot of people have told me that essentially what the psychopath did, or sociopath, what they did was simply, reflect them back to themselves. In other words, one person said, "Oh, everything that I liked, he liked, and everything that I wanted, he wanted. I met my twin." And that's what they do, is they make you think that they're just your mirror image, which in the beginning might be kind of flattering, but because you don't realize what's going on. Although some people do say it gets kind of oppressive. But anyway, that's one of the things that they do. And once you realize the extent to which this person was fake, again, that affects your whole worldview, your Weltanschauung. When you thought people were real and you realize that this person doesn't even have a core, doesn't even have anything going on inside. The lights are there, but nobody's home. All of that really pulls the rug out from under you. But as I said, it absolutely, you can recover from it. Sometimes the emotional ride is a little bumpy, but it certainly can be done. Okay, so Scorpio Bird is coming up with a question. So we'll answer that question when she has it ready. But in the meantime, I was talking about the Weltanschauung, the worldview. And so where do we get this worldview? Well, a lot of it we absorb essentially from our society, from the people around us, from the culture. And so as we're growing up, we often hear messages, well, here in the United States, we're all created equal. It's part of the, Declaration of Independence. And we also hear that, we're all God's children, and everybody is, everybody just wants to be loved. So we're always hearing all these messages about essentially how everybody is the same. Well, so this becomes important for our worldview, and then we find out through the experience with the sociopath that it's not true. It's not true that we're all the same. It's not true that we all want to be loved. I mean, sociopaths don't know what love is, so how can they want to be loved? And the fact of the matter is that about 12% of the population, or some people say 15%, they're fundamentally different from the rest of us. So we are not all the same. So all of these messages that we hear contribute to our belief that everybody is essentially the same. So then what happens is that when we discover or we start to sense that we're dealing with somebody, that something is wrong with this person, then we get more messages from society. So that, in other words, we're supposed to give people the benefit of the doubt. And everybody deserves a second chance. And we all have baggage. So even when we're starting to get a message, maybe an intuitive message, that there's a problem, we get all these other messages from society telling us to ignore the problem. So this becomes a real issue, because when we do see the trouble, we are taught to override our perceptions. And then we have this devastating experience where, we find out that, everything that we've always believed is not true. And this is usually what people struggle with even more, or at least just as bad as the fact that they've been targeted by a sociopath. The idea that, their whole conception of how to live life needs to be changed. This is why it's such a big deal. So anyway, how can we protect ourselves? And hopefully we learn this through this experience, is that the best thing we can do is listen to our intuition, because our intuition will give us the warning, something's not right. In fact, maybe you heard these messages before you got involved with this person, or early on, something's not right. This is a little weird, but you overrode it. You didn't want to be judgmental, and you didn't have evidence, so you didn't want to listen to that. So your intuition, what comes up from within, is the best warning that you'll ever get as far as how to avoid getting involved with a sociopath, or if you're already kind of involved, extricating yourself before too much damage is done. Okay, so. Dorian, I'll give you that information. I would be happy to speak with you. Just go to lovefraud.com/talk to Donna, and all the information is there about how to set this up. So, and I'm still, waiting for Scorpio Bird, who's coming up with a question. But anyway, I guess my main message tonight is, yes, it's bad. Yes, it's devastating. But when you start to release what has happened, and this is a process. In fact, when I talk to people, I often describe it as drilling for oil, because these are emotional disturbances that are within. And the idea is that you want to release the disturbances. And unfortunately, we all have lots of them, because of the things that we've been through. So if you think of it as an oil well, you drill down, some black gunk comes out. You drill down a little further, more black gunk comes out. You drill down a little further, more black gunk comes out. And the idea is to keep digging and digging and digging. So it can take some time to work through this. And the thing is that typically there are reasons, especially if we're talking about a romantic relationship with a sociopath, there are reasons in our past, things that happened in the past that made us vulnerable to the sociopath. So while we're drilling for oil, we're going down, more gunk is coming out. Then the idea is to try and hit that pocket of oil related to past experiences, perhaps a previous relationship, perhaps something when you were young, even going back to childhood. And when you hit that's connected or that made you vulnerable to this experience, that's when you hit pay dirt, so to speak. I mean, that's the idea is to get to the root of what happened, the root of what made you vulnerable. And then hopefully, once you get to that, then you can really start releasing everything that happened. Because, that's what sociopaths do. They figure out our vulnerabilities and use them in order to hook us. They figure out what our pain is and promise to make the pain go away. That's typically what they do and how they hook us. And so if we, on our own, can find those painful spots and heal them, guess what? Then you stop being vulnerable to sociopaths because there's nothing for them to latch onto. So, you typed it. Okay, well, Scorpio Bird, I don't see your question. Maybe you can, talk a little bit longer, see if I can get that question from Scorpio Bird. So, anyway, let me tell you a little bit more about True Lovefraud Stories, the podcast that I'm the host of. And this is where survivors tell their own outrageous stories of betrayal. And I also interview experts on issues raised in the stories. So you can listen to True Lovefraud Stories wherever you get your podcasts. We're up to about 50 different episodes now, people who've been telling their stories, and I really enjoy doing it. They're like dramatic stories and have a nice script and music and everything, so it comes across really well. So if you haven't listened to any of the True Lovefraud Stories podcasts, I encourage you to do that. You can find the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, any of those places. It's also available right on YouTube and YouTube Music, or you can go to lovefraud.com/podcasts. Oh, so I do have another question here. So, Phase 3 Baddie, well, that's an interesting name, says, why do they have vacant eyes? I've never heard an explanation of why they have vacant eyes. But the key is to understand that they do have vacant eyes. And because that is what goes on with their eyes is pretty much the only physical symptom you'll ever see that indicates that you might be dealing with a sociopath. I mean, their physical appearance runs the gamut. Some are, sophisticated, good-looking, rich people who just have no conscience, and some are, tatted up drug dealers or gangbangers or something like that. Some, just they could be male, female, all ages, all religions, all demographic groups. So there is no other physical characteristic that indicates that you may be dealing with a sociopath other than the eyes. And I've seen some people describe it as shark eyes because it looks like nobody's home. Now, the only thing that I can tell you about the eyes, which is important to understand or to recognize, is that sometimes when they get really angry, you see these black eyes. And, people have told me that, the person has blue eyes and then they go into a rage and the eyes are black. Well, that's actually a physical reaction that has to do with aggression. And it typically happens, when they're flying into a rage. And it is a serious sign that this is a scary person and you need to do what you can to back out of the situation. But what it is essentially their nervous system going into overdrive. I mean, when you see those black eyes, they are possibly prepping for violence. So that's a really big warning sign that you need to be aware of. And so Dorian says, vacant eyes can be overlooked. It's the staring when their eyes turn black, dilated pupils from excitement. Yeah, it's excitement, but more than excitement. It's usually anger, indicating that the person is preparing to lash out. And the vacant eyes is also can be hard to spot because sometimes they're kind of drifting off and then you don't if they notice that you're looking, they suddenly focus again. So sometimes the best place to see those vacant eyes is in a photograph. I mean, you may have seen a photograph where the person is just there's nobody home there. So that's, a place where you might be able to see it. And, okay, so now we have a question from Strong Java who asks, can I talk about how cognitive dissonance affects victims? Yes. Cognitive dissonance happens when we'll say you're the person who is involved with someone who turns out to be not what you thought. Cognitive dissonance means that you had originally made a decision about somebody, like deciding that this person is attractive, appealing, you're falling in love with something like that. And then you realize that you may not be correct, that you may have made a wrong choice. You made a bad decision in getting involved with this person. But you're so invested in your original decision that you can't accept any information that indicates that your decision was wrong. In other words, a lot of times people simplify this to say that, essentially, you want to believe what you want to believe, and you refuse to even consider any information that indicates that your belief is wrong. I mean, that's the way some people describe cognitive dissonance. But essentially what it means is that you have, invested your energy, your emotional energy or whatever into your belief about a person, and then you have found out that your belief is wrong and you don't want to give up that belief. It's too painful. So you ignore the information that indicates that your belief is wrong. So this is one of the things that happens, when people get involved with a sociopath, and it's It's related to the addictive nature of these involvements, because romantic relationship with sociopaths are addictive. I mean, any involvement with a sociopath is addictive. And that's why it can be so difficult to break away from the person, because you're addicted to it. You're addicted to the relationship. And so it kind of goes hand in hand with the cognitive dissonance, because you're addicted to this person. I mean, and it becomes biological. It's not just, an idea. Your body gets accustomed to this person, and your body is used to the dopamine, when this person is good to you and you're having a good time. So it becomes physically addictive, biologically addictive. So that goes hand in hand with the cognitive dissonance, in that, because you're addictive, you don't want to take in information that proves that you're wrong. So this all kind of goes together. So the bottom line is that it can be difficult to break away from a disordered partner, a sociopath, narcissist, because there are both psychological and biological forces within you that are keeping you attached to this person. So it's important to know this, because, sometimes you wonder, it's like, why can't I just walk away? Well, I mean, there are very good reasons why you can't just walk away. And so that's why it's important to understand, what you're dealing with and how it affects you. And then also to make sure you have resources lined up, when you are ready to go away, to also help you stay away, because that's really hard. Essentially, one of the things that happens, and addiction research shows this, or research of the brain shows this, is that, once you suppose the person leaves you, and you realize that, this person is bad for you, it's been ruining your life or whatever, but what happens is, when you can't get what you want it even more. And that's just the biology of it. So that's why it's so important, if you can, hopefully, to get some support, when you're leaving the person, and also to stay away, because that's a vulnerable time, when you're just getting away from someone, and, they can turn on the charm again, they can plead, they could say, oh, I love you, whatever, and you're right back in it. So it can be hard to leave. Okay. Wow. So Mojo says, my ex would have vacant eyes right before his eyes turned black. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. We had lots of good questions, lots of good comments tonight. I appreciate it. I hope you saw the notice that we have changed Love Fraud Live to Wednesdays instead of Tuesdays. I found out that it works better for me to be able to do that, so I hope it's just as good for you. But anyway, we will be here next week, next Wednesday at 8 p.m. ET. That's Eastern Time, for the next episode of Love Fraud Live. So thanks for joining me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you again. See you soon.